God, I forgot we were recording.
Yeah.
Um, okay.
Intro?
What intro? This intro is going to be using intro question mark. Welcome back to Right as Rain. I had to remember the name of the show.
Good
Oh
job.
God. It's a bit of a catch-up show. It is now mid-May, right? Um, about is it has it been 4 matches since our like the first 4 matches of the season? It's been 4 matches. Yeah, I guess we're doing 4 game chunks here.
Mm.
Um, the Rain aren't in a bad spot, you know. There's a lot of season to play. Um, and really since that last episode though, they've been on this solid run. Um, they had this unbeaten streak of 3 matches. And really, that Houston match that they lost this past 3 days ago, actually. I don't know. It just, it's a tough. I think it shows the parity of the NWSL and that there's room to grow for this team. So yeah, no, and the reason we are kind of in and out of this is both Bella and I are. Well, Bella's in school still. Bella has to graduate. Nerd. Um, and we both have a lot that we do in our respective sports jobs. We're working on more players and puppies episodes. I think that is fair to say.
We are
I hope I'm not
trying. Ryan,
okay.
please.
Okay. I was good. I didn't know if you want me to hide that, but yeah, we got more of our
Should I say
players and
Leslie,
puppy
please,
shows.
instead?
Um, at I can text her and just at Leslie. I don't know why I would at someone on my phone
That's an odd
in the
choice.
text, but
Mm.
yeah. So working on that. I mean, as Bella gestured, the storm season starts. Regular season starts on Saturday, so there's a lot going on around here. I think before anything else, though, it's kind of not kind of, it's been a difficult week in the women's soccer world, with Savvy King, and what happened there. Thankfully, from everything I read, and unless I missed something, she's doing well. She's back at home now. And I think the family just wants privacy at this time, which is understandable given
I don't
how,
know if she's back at home, but she is with
no,
family at the hospital.
okay.
Just because
Um,
she only underwent heart surgery on Tuesday. My guess is you stay in the
oh,
hospital for
okay. So
more
I
than a
think it's
day
more
after a
her
surgery
being
like
with
that.
family
She,
is what
but
I
she is
saw.
with family and she is recovering and her prognosis is good.
Yeah, okay. So I think that was the main thing with that. And I know it was just like during the pre-match presser ahead of the Houston match, Laura made sure herself to mention that. I know it was asked of God, who did we talk to? I think it was Jordan that we talked to pre-match. I don't know. I was there. I was in the Cafe Vita in Pioneer Square. I don't remember a lot of things. But anyway, I know she was asked about it. So that as well as I can double check. Yep, it was Jordan Bug. I do remember things. Um Locally, Mia Hamant, with Mia with UW Women's Soccer, um, you know, had a terrible diagnosis somewhat recently, but I mean she's been able to raise a good amount of money to deal with the costs of dealing with cancer, working to deal with that because it Lord knows, especially not in this country in this climate, that is not cheap. Diagnosed with a rare kidney cancer after she had a really great season with Washington. I mean, Washington was one of the better defensive women's soccer teams in the NCAA this past year, and their goalkeeper was no like she was a big part of that. Um, so she seems to be in good spirits. She's got a Instagram that you can follow along with her journey. I believe it's at Mia Kicks Cancer. Yep, at Mia Kicks Cancer. Kind of detailing it. Oh, she's gone bald. Yep. She's she's
You got your
joined
look.
the ranks. Yep. She had the bob for a little bit. The Rain also before the match held a banner that says "We're with you, Mia," ahead of the Houston match, which was really cool to see. I tried to get a picture with my phone. I think Bella saw me try to get a picture, but it just happened too quick, and my phone's not that good. Um, but yes, I believe if you do want, the women's game. The women's game shared it as well. Sam Lewis shared a message, her GoFundMe. I will put that in the link, the bio, sorry, of this. And yeah, she's raised $117,000. Jesus Christ. That is awesome. Um, God. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I think it was at like 25,000 initially. That's really cool. So, yeah, I thought that was important to talk about, especially just, the women's soccer scene, let alone the women's sports scene in the city is growing so quickly. Obviously with the rain and UW women's soccer has, played a good amount uh of a role in I guess the rain just because of the pipeline. And then, the scrimmages, sorry. Um and then of course the USLW league teams around here as well. So anyway, I thought that was important to say in the beginning because sometimes by the end of a podcast, people just tune the fuck out. Um, so anyway, let's talk about this team. They've been on a decent little run, Bella. I'm sure they'd like to, and Laura certainly would like to win the matches by more than a goal. But and I think it would be easier for our hearts. But yeah, after that Orlando match on the 12th, that we kind of looked at the first four matches of the season. Sorry, still doing that. Um, they hosted Portland first match in that rivalry this year. They beat them 1-0, and it came early. It was Maddie Darlene's first NWSL goal. Very cool. Came in the fourth minute. I after the Orlando match and how hard she'd worked and the chances she had, like it was nice to see her get on the scoreboard like that. Um, and the Rain kind of had to just battle the hell out and hold on to that because they didn't score again after that. Um, I look at this match and I see three yellow cards and I'm like, yep, that's about right for this match, this rivalry. Um, you know, so that was nice to get the 3 points at home. Portland, I was gonna say Portland hasn't been that stellar this year, but they're sixth in the table. It's weird for me to see them without the firepower that they normally have, and I think that's why my mind takes them down a peg per se. Um, I'm gonna lump them all into one. So I'm sure you want to talk about individual things, and if you want to jump in, please do that. But since we got four matches, I'm gonna kind of lump them. Um, oh goodness, yeah, this Bay FC match on the road. I think because of the way last year's match at Bay FC went, I just have bad memories of playing at Bay FC, which not like there are a lot of them to be. Um, but yeah, Bay FC got on the board first in the 32nd minute. Seattle really should have had at least one goal in the first half. Off of I remember Bella texting me this because the Mariners were playing at home during it, and I did have the match up on my second screen to my left, but I must have missed it because Bella goes, "Oh my!" It was just some along the lines of, "Did you see that?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" It was a bad one. Bay FC essentially gifted Jordyn Huitema possession in a breakaway, all alone, and I don't know. What would you say? Kind of overthinking with that one.
Yeah, overthinking took a little too much time. Just sort of, yeah, probably overdid it and and gave the goalkeeper time to uh get in position and make a save on her essentially.
Yeah.
um
So that was rough. But I mean, Jordan got some redemption with a goal in the 50th minute to equalize. I believe it was shortly off a corner, which the Rain had 10 in this match, which is kind of funny to see. Um, Um, so at the end of the day, getting the split points, they'll take that. And, I remember this was the match I had this stupid thing on my shoulder, and I tried to uplift Laura Harvey's spirits a little bit. I think she noticed eventually. Oh, she did compliment the moose at the end. That's right.
yeah,
Anyway, let's get back to the seriousness. So,
yeah,
you
I
beat Portland, sure. You split points against Bay FC on the road. not bad. Then you come back to play, Kansas City, and Kansas City over the last few years is nothing to, overlook, you know, whatever sort of terminology you want to use to basically look past. And especially not considering that they are at the top of the table right now, presently. And the Rain were able to beat them. 37th minute goal by Lynn Biondolo, her first with the Rain, kind of banged home a ball that was bouncing around in the box. Is all Seattle needs in this one. Again, I'm sure they would have liked to not play it so tight and so scarily, especially considering how much they had to defend. I mean, 13 shot attempts for Kansas City, um, three of them on goal. So, Seattle only getting two on goal, and one of them being, that one from Lynn. So, uh, huge, huge, just a big win. Again, not something that I don't think last year's group could put together. And they've really had to defend quite a bit in key situations. That, so many odd mistakes, I guess, uncharacteristic mistakes defensively last year, things that just we wouldn't see. Um, and I
There
don't
was
think we've
also
really,
there was also sort of those situations where, and Laura has talked about it, where they would concede a goal and then sort of lose belief in themselves
yeah,
and not
they'd
quite be able to get themselves back into the game.
get a bit deflated.
And that hasn't happened so far this season,
No,
right? Other than the Houston game, which
mm,
everyone is sort of hoping is a blip. The
as has said,
Yeah, but against North Carolina, they scored first. North Carolina immediately equalizes, come back, score a second goal. Bay FC, they scored first, came back to equalize. Even against Angel City, they got a goal back with a penalty after conceding the first goal. They lost that game, but it was still like some coming back from the frustration or disappointment of conceding a goal. And even, I was mildly concerned after Kansas City had scored the goal that was called back for offsides, because
yes,
sometimes even those sort of like situations where the ball went in the back of the net but it didn't count would still seem to sort of demoralize them.
yeah,
And against Kansas City, if anything, I think it woke them up to be like, oh shit, no, we gotta be on top of things. And I think the Kansas City game is a great example of how they want to play,
mm,
how they want the defense to start from the front, how it's a very collective team effort. They got a little lucky in that Hema Chawinga could only play, I think, 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Laura joked after the game that she studied Chawinga coming off in their previous game and her injury more than she studied the actual game that
yes,
Kansas City
she did
played,
say that.
because that's how good of a player she is. And obviously, like the similar player for Orlando, Barbara Banda, like her one chance on goal was immediately what won Orlando that game. So I think the Kansas City game was a lot of great things. I love Laura's comment after that game about goals like that being the reason she was so excited when when she heard there was the possibility of getting Lynn Biondolo,
Mm,
because Lynn and Lynn talked about it after the game. She was like, "Well, the player blocked my first shot, so I was like, let's go for a second time." There was no, like, to me, it almost looked like she kind of had like juggled it to herself, but no, she was like, "Okay, it's blocked. I'm just gonna try and toe poke it this time." And like, Laura talked about how some of their other forwards. Sorry, my dog. So I'm trying to get her to stop digging in things. Hello, I love you, but not at
oh
the
wow.
time. Um, but uh, that some of the other forwards on the Reign are kind of looking for that perfect chance. They want to connect well with the ball. They're really trying to get that ideal opportunity. And Lynn is just, and I mean not just in that it's not a skill. Like Lynn is an incredible player, but she just has this ability to poach goals, or just find a finish, or just be the first one to a ball in a scramble and not care how it goes in, but get the ball in the goal. Right? It's also kind of part of why Alex Morgan was good for a lot of her career, because in the box she would just tap something home. And that was what the Reign were missing a lot of last year was they would have those scrambles in front of goal and someone would send it high and you're like, you're 2 feet out. How did that even happen?
Yeah.
And so having, you know, in a game like Kansas City where you're probably not going to get chances in transition, um, partially because you're defending their transition game, and they have she found her way into the toy basket. Oh no, things are going to start squeaking. Um,
You don't want to
but
play. You don't want to get in a track meet with Kansas City.
you don't want to get in a track meet with Kansas City. I mean, you think of Temwa Chwenga, but Dabinia is shockingly fast as well. Loa Labonta is a menace in midfield. Bia Zanerato is back from injury now, and she's fantastic. Um, so they've got a lot of very difficult players to defend, and I think it was a really good example of just defending as a team, not defending your one-on-one
Mm,
assignments, but making sure that everyone was communicating, everyone was getting back to cover, everyone, if someone got beat, someone else is tracking back.
mm.
Um, and it was also the other thing that was really nice to hear was about how much Lynn is enjoying her time in Seattle.
Yeah.
I had
Yeah.
asked her about how she scored a lot of goals in her career. She is the all-time leading goal scorer in all competitions in the NWSL for a reason. But it was her first for the Reign, and she talked about how welcomed she has felt. And you never know how it's going to go when you go to a new club. She always thought that she was going to be a one or two club player. Now this is, I believe, her fourth, and it's a tough situation to move when you kind of thought that you had done your last move and she didn't know how it was going to go. But she has felt incredibly supported by both the team and the fans, and I'm not just like assuming that she said that. Um, she said that she, has loved the fan support. She has felt so welcomed by her teammates, and that it felt so wonderful to score for a club like that. And so that was just a really nice thing to hear because obviously, when you get a new player, you hope that they feel welcome. You hope that they know how much fans are excited for them. You hope that the team welcomes them, but you never really know. And so it was wonderful to hear from her that it's also been a very positive experience for her.
And I think, for this area, that with some of the teams, you get so used to their stars leaving, right? And I mean, even like some of the teams that you and I talk about, when she spent some time here, but Stewie left, right? There were different circumstances, but Jules gone. Um, with this team, with Rose and Emily Sonnet, like I think because of that, because of how hard it is sometimes to attract some of the top tier talent across the different teams in this area, um, like I think fans have not to be mean in a way at all. Um, some of the fans here have abandonment issues in a way, right? So like when it's a player, let alone of that caliber, saying I'm enjoying my time here, and then especially talking about the culture of this club, I think that really resonates with people. I know at CSS we have one follower named Sarah who like basically like let's fucking go. When I tweeted that, I was like, yeah, people are gonna like that. So, um, I know that was some great team discussion. Really quick, I'll cap off that 4 game stretch here with the Houston match. Which I mean, you talk about the defending, and they've been doing it really well. Um, it just this
up,
one the
up
one
until
goal,
that goal.
yeah, the one goal, 57th minute, Maggie Graham scores. Jordan Bugg's trying to get the ball up the field. Uh, Houston's there on the spot, which leads to kind of like a 3-on-2 in a way. And Maggie Graham just gets right in front of, I think it's Lou, for
Yeah,
basically just kind of a poke in. Um, and that's
yeah.
it. I
And
mean,
there,
Seattle, I mean, you can tell me what you thought, and we can kind of make this more of a 4 match kind of thing. But at least somewhat early on, it felt like Seattle would get like dangerous build up, dangerous possession, and then Houston just because they would come back, it just would get snuffed out. And it's like, all right, we're just kind of all hanging out here. Um, and don't really think they challenged, I think, Abby Smith much at all.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they had, and we talked about this with Lou and Haz and Laura. Um, that was a three, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Post match, the substitutes did a little bit. They brought some injection. Emery Adamas, was it Emery's shot who almost had a banger? Um,
Hers is the one that went off the crossbar.
Crossbar, yes.
Maddie had the one who was saved, the one that was saved, I believe.
Yeah. So, there were some chances for sure, but it just wasn't enough. So Seattle loses that one. Ultimately, they now sit at 3 wins, 3 losses, 2 draws, eighth in the league, which is good for the last playoff spot. 3 points moves you up to 4 or 5. I don't, yeah, 4 or 5, I think. So anyway, that's where we're at now. I do want to bring it up, you talk about the defending, right? And something that really stuck out to me, I think it was during one of the pre-match pressers or the open one of the open practices I was at. But Laura mentioned, yeah, I think it was the open practice. Laura mentioned, I asked about the assistant coaches, particularly because the last match against Kansas City, Scott Parkinson was in the back of the press conference and Laura shouted him out for something. Um, oh,
Yeah,
because
for
she's like,
working with
oh,
the defense.
yes, yeah, and he mentioned that, and I kind of prodded her a little bit about it, but that hearing that, I think Phoebe brought it up that the defense has been, staying. I think Lynn actually mentioned that they go out as a group and they're looking for the defenders
Mm-hmm.
and they're also watching film.
Yeah.
So there's that, you know, it just seems like there's a lot of onus on the defenders to not repeat what the hell happened last year. And it's just interesting to hear these details about what Lynn said about watching extra film, Scott working with them a little bit, and about how Scott, I guess, played center back. And so he likes to work with the defenders a bit more because Laura shared that she would like ideally the assistants kind of rotate things. But Scott's kind of taken a liking to the defending side of things. I don't know. What do you make, I guess, of that whole like the whole kind of journey there, with Scott being involved and with how the defense has played this year, because I mean they've only allowed, I think, 2 goals once, and that was the Angel City match. Um, they look good defensively. I mean, if they give up a goal, it's the rare mistake, it seems like. I think actually the North Carolina goal was pretty good, if I remember correctly. But I don't know. Yeah, just generally with the defensive side of the ball, what are you seeing with the Reign? Because it's obviously an improvement from what we saw last year, and it's kind of fun to hear what we do with the behind the scenes sort of thing, that we've talked about.
Well, if you had read my story for the Equalizer, no, I'm kidding, but I did
You
I
got a
did write
free.
about
I
this
don't. I
last.
don't want to pay.
I was actually gonna offer to send you just like a Word document of it if you wanted to read it because I
Just
like
do
don't
that.
expect yeah. But I kind of forgot to ask because you know me, I'm a little spicy. But no, genuinely, I did write about this because I thought it was very interesting. Um, the I think it was Claudia who had talked about the defense putting a lot of pressure on themselves to get better. It seems that it hasn't had to be an external push from someone. It hasn't been like when your high school coach begs you to get back on defense. Like these players are frustrated about last year and they want to do better. And they feel like they have been improving every game. And I think that's true. I think that, for as bad as the Houston game was,
Mm,
a lot of it was more up until the goal, a lot of it was more so unforced turnovers at bad times than it
mm,
was completely bad defending. The goal was there certainly was a miscommunication on the side there with Jordyn Bug and Anna Maria Sorna-Gorchevich, and that ended up giving Yasmin Ryan way too much space and time to send that cross in. And the cross that she was then able to get in is one where it's like there's like a 2% chance of that not being a goal. right? So by the time she got to that, like, Lou had someone running in on her back and there was nothing she could really do. Um, so, you know, I think I don't know if that's them like still kind of needing to figure out that five back system, which is
Mm,
something that is I think relatively new to Laura Harvey's system. It's not that she's never played them, but she's much more been known to play a traditional four back. Like that just
yeah,
has sort of been her tried and true for several seasons. Partially because of the personnel that she has.
yeah,
Um, and I've liked what Maddie Darlene brings as a wing back, but I also kind of miss having her speed up top. I think it adds another dimension to the press
yeah.
when it's not just Lynn running at them, but it's Lynn and Maddie. Jordyn's pretty fast, but she's not as fast as Maddie, right?
It's a
Like
different speed.
the fastest players on the team are definitely Maddie and Lynn. And I think against teams like Kansas City and Orlando, it made a ton of sense to play that wing back because
Yep.
Maddie Darlene did a F ton of defensive tracking back on Barba Banda and Temba Chawinga and Bia and like all of those players, and she did a fantastic job. Like her, one of my favorite quotes from Laura, that again is in my story if you want to check it out. Um, was, Maddie's such a winner. You never want to take her off the field. Like she desperately wants to win. She is going to work her ass off to do it. Um, and so I was a little surprised to see the five back again against Houston because
Yeah.
um, I didn't totally understand if it was because of the Reign's available personnel, if it was because of Houston's personnel. Because Houston have a decent amount of pace up top, Messiah Bright in particular. Let me go grab that squeaking toy from my dog. 1 second. Zero.
If it's any comfort, I can hardly hear it.
I can though. It's incredibly loud, and it looks like she
That's fair.
also pulled a bunch of stuffing out of a different toy.
Zero is
So
just trying to bring the sort of chaos that we're looking for from the attack at times. I was, yeah, while you're dealing with that, I'll quickly expand. Just, I think the Maddie Darlene point is a great point because, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but, between Lynn being hurt to begin the year and working back from that, and then now the wing back, like, we really haven't seen them both play and fully unleash things up top together, right? Like without
we saw it
Maddie
against
having
Portland,
okay, that's one match.
and I think
You get
against
what I'm
Bang
saying
as
though?
well.
Like,
Yeah, I do
yeah,
get what you're saying. Yeah,
I would like to see it more. And while I understand it, if the wing back is how things are going to be, did you even ask? I think you asked, was it last
I
match you asked about it? Kind of like, is this
after
going
the
to be a thing
Houston
you're
game, I
doing?
did ask like, why did we see the five back again? Is that
Yeah.
something you expect to see more of?
Yes.
And Laura sort of didn't answer, and then went into a rant about there not being enough effort. And I didn't really have the time or ability to be like, hey, Laura, that actually wasn't my question.
Hey,
So I
so back to that. Can you answer
so
that
actually I still don't have an answer to that. Probably will end up asking after the next game if we see it again.
if we see it again? Yeah.
Um, I mean, she's definitely liked the ability of Anna Maria and Maddie
Mhm.
Darlene to play those wingback positions. And I think at the same time, I do think that personally, this is my thought, that part of it is Maddie Curry not being 90 minutes fit right now. She
Yeah.
had some injury issues. And I think she came in and played like 30 minutes in against Houston, something like that.
I can double
Um,
check.
because against Orlando, we saw her as part of that five back, but then against Kansas City, she was able to play only like 10 minutes. And I think that Maddie Curry is
Hmm.
a really great player. Zara, hey, off. Is a really great player to have in that five back. I think I like um, her connection a little bit more than I do Anna Maria, but also, you have the benefit of a veteran in Anna Maria. I mean, anytime you can get someone who like won Champions League with Barcelona, it's like,
About 30 minutes is right. Yeah.
yeah. And so I think I think if Maddie Curry is healthy, you might be more likely to see the four back where Jordyn and Phoebe are your center backs, Lou plays outside back and Maddie Curry is the other outside back. But it's also hard to tell because the first couple games, Lou was injured and we were seeing Emily Mason, and then
I was
we've seen a
I was gonna
lot
ask,
of, yeah.
is like, sorry to take you off of it, but it's like with the four back, right? Is Emily Mason that much of a downgrade to where you feel like you need to play? Do you get what I'm saying here? Because as you were talking about, she did play a little bit, you know, I think Maddie Curry switched sides because they wanted Emily on the right side. So if you're taking Maddie Curry off and Lou is here presently, then you just slot Emily Mason in. I don't, if they want, I don't know. It could be more than just, hey, we feel more comfortable in the five back, than a four with Maddie Curry not at 90 minutes fit. I'm just wondering, like, if they wanted to keep it, if the only thing keeping them out of a four back is Maddie Curry not being 90 minutes fit, then like, is Emily
Well,
Mason not?
I don't
Do you
think
see
that's
what I'm
the only
saying?
thing. Yes, no, I understand what you're saying. I don't
Yeah, it has to
one
not be the.
I don't Madison Curry is not the only factor at all.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
do think it is a factor.
Mm,
Um, I think particularly against teams like Kansas City and Orlando, we will continue to see a five back with Maddie Darlene on the wing solely because of the speed that she possesses and
yeah,
her ability to defend
yeah.
those fast as fuck players like Vanda and Chewinga. No other way to say it. Like,
No, it's true.
I
It's
mean,
true.
against Orlando, the amount of tracking back, like the pictures, I like just even looking at the pictures, you can tell that she is running for her life, and she is making Barbara Banda have to work way harder than a lot of other teams have made her work. Um, so I don't think Maddie Curry is the only thing, but I do feel like if Maddie Curry is fully healthy, we might see a bit more of the four back. I think there are definitely games, again, like Orlando and Kansas City, where we will see that five back again. Um, because in the past, if Laura's played a five back, it's sort of been like a one off and then not come back
Mm,
to it. And now she's played it three times this season in what, 8 games?
yeah,
So she clearly likes something about it for some teams, right? Like they didn't play it against Portland because, Portland is a good team, but they don't really have those
no,
really fast
no,
players who stretch you up top. And I think the wingbacks also allow them to do, you know, maybe give the midfielders for the opposition less space because while Orlando and Kansas City have very talented forwards, they also have incredibly talented midfields, right? You have
yeah,
Marta and Angelina over in Orlando. You have Lou Labonta, Dabinia in Kansas City, like very talented midfields that make their teams run. They may not be the goal scorers all the time, but they are the engines of their team. And I think that the wingbacks have given the ability to clog up that area a little bit more than if you just were sort of relying on a center back to step up or someone in that back four.
yeah,
You have a little more cover if you're having your wingback step in there than if you're playing a back four. And sort of you're forcing them into the middle of the field a little bit more than allowing them to escape out the sides. um, so it'll be interesting to see how much we see it. um, you know i I also wonder, is it like wanting Lou at center back more than you want her at outside back and not wanting to take Jordan Bugg or Phoebe McClernand out of that center back spot because they've
yeah,
been very good. And I
yes.
think that Lou is very, very talented,
Mhm.
but she will be the first to acknowledge that she is not young, nor has she ever been particularly fast.
Yeah,
So when she has been that sort of lone outside back there, it's caused a few issues sometimes.
sure.
It
Yeah,
definitely helps when there's a fast player like Maddie Darlene tracking back. Because as Megan Rapinoe would say, she would never track back for Lou. And like it would always kind of be like she would sort of joke about how little defense she played on Lou's side of the field. Um, so, because Lou is such a talented defender, and I think part of the reason that they have been good defensively is because they have her voice back. Especially with
conducting
Jess
things.
Fishlock you know, not healthy right
Mhm.
now. Like having that not just veteran but talented veteran presence, because you have veterans and then you have veterans who have played more minutes and more games than anybody else, and no one was is
Ever.
in within even a season. And she has
Yeah.
also won 3 NWSL shields,
Yep.
been to 2 championships. Like she, she is an unsung player in NWSL history, unfortunately. But she is fantastic, and even after the Houston game, her knowledge of just being like, yeah, it gets chaotic after those goals are scored, and we need someone to sort of calm us down and get us together. And she is one of those players. And I
Hmm.
think just her voice directing people is a huge asset to have out there. So if playing a five back is how you get Lou out there, in the most effective way, I'll take it. you know?
Yeah. No, I think that's something maybe that like an average fan wouldn't maybe appreciate with like a Lou Barnes or like you mentioned, having just Fishlock on the field. Like I think I learned this pretty quickly, like when I started doing all of this in year one at Shaney Stadium, year one for me, sorry. And I could hear from the press box, because we're at a baseball stadium, I can hear
Mm-hmm.
just Fishlock
Oh
yelling.
yeah,
And I'm like, huh. So that's the engine right there. I could
yeah.
tell early on. And I
There's a
think that,
reason that coaches want veterans on their teams. It's not
yes,
just like it's not arbitrary.
no. And I think the word that maybe like you talk about like experience, that in this situation is pedigree with those two. Like those two have been through it. They know how to get there. Like, so, what was I gonna say? A few things. One, you talk about Lou Barnes defending, like as someone who did play as center back, so Scott Parkinson and I have two things in common: bald and center back.
Nice.
Um,
I have one of
I could
those.
watch
Can you
her.
guess which one?
I'm gonna ignore that. I could watch her make tackles for hours. I would listen if she would like
My
sit
favorite
down
pastime.
with me for like an hour and teach me. I would, you know, there's so many times where I'll do it and I'll like do a little gasp, and I wonder how many times Bella will hear it, because it's one of my favorite things to watch when it happens, because it's just so smooth and clean. And sometimes the attacker reacts and sometimes they don't, because that's how good it is. Yeah, I think a good point that maybe I didn't think of in the moment when these matches and like looking at the lineups, right, is yeah, like you if you're Laura Harvey, put yourself in those shoes and on that cooler. Um, I'm not taking either of Phoebe or Jordyn off. Like,
No,
and I was gonna say again, maybe to the casual fan perspective, Phoebe McClernand's so underrated. Like, I remember being
she's
so
been
worried about
fantastic.
her. Like when she first was it her when she first came here? It was just a little bit worried about any time she was in the
She
starting
had a
group.
tendency to pick up yellow and occasionally red
She
cards. And
loves
there
a
was definitely
tackle.
one game where Laura was like, she had a yellow early in the game, and she was like, I'm shocked Phoebe didn't get a second yellow.
Yes, I'm pretty sure I remember that. Yeah, so she's had a great evolution here, I would say.
yeah.
Um, and so I don't know. It's fun to talk defense, especially because it reminds me of what I used to do. I was never as good as any of these athletes. We'll put that out of the way now. It makes me
Yeah.
think of Asia Wilson being on that subway and talking about the reporters having to play the sport. I'm like, I did. I'm not saying I was very good, but it helps me, I guess, maybe appreciate the defensive side of the ball a little bit more. Um, Really quickly with some injury things, talk about Jess. The last sort of thing, like right now, your injury report. Oh no, never mind. There is an addition. Your injury report is Jess Fishlock and Norelia Mondesir. Both I've pestered Laura about it because no one else will, seemingly. And that's fine. That's fair. Someone's got to do it, right?
It's not
Because
really a
other,
post game question, and the pre games are normally when I have class.
yeah. So I have to do it.
Yeah.
Um, and otherwise she won't say anything because
Yes.
she doesn't have to, right? And we just
Correct.
wait for the so Coco's dealing with a muscular thing is what Laura said. Um and she didn't give much of anything on Jess, which sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and with the level of football that Jess has played, and with what she has to prepare for, like they're gonna do all they can to keep her good and ready for the rest of the year, right?
Right.
Um, what Laura said in terms of injuries for those two is that a few weeks max is what they expect them to be um, out for the remainder of. And the hope is to have them back prior to the next FIFA window. So
Which is like the end of May, so I don't see that happening.
that's what Laura said. Laura
I
has
know
said
it's what
funny things too before.
I know
So
it's what she said, but it's coming up pretty soon. Like if it was like a
yeah,
month out, sure. But saying a couple weeks and then also like they're ready by the end of the month, like before the like FIFA break, I don't know. And
yeah.
then
So that could be Laura speak.
assuming Jess goes, travels to Wales to play,
Yeah.
right? Like I can't imagine, maybe she plays a game or like 15 minutes before she goes or something. But I have to imagine you're focusing on her being as healthy as possible, first and foremost for the Euros.
Of course.
Second for like playoff run, but first and foremost for the Euros because that is such a massive thing for Wales.
Yeah.
And she'll
So
want to be healthy and available to work with her team during the FIFA break, and that will be the priority for this, this time around. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
So there's that update because I know sometimes I know I made a new whole template for injury updates because I got tired of no one why is Tito out, and I'm just like I put some out about it, man. So I put a like it's nice and pretty, but we'll say it on here of course as well. And then the other one, largely the availability report is the two season ending injuries in Ryan Brown and Veronica Latsko, and then those two. um, Before I talk about Cassie Miller, I asked to like, I know with an ACL injury, it's a long recovery, right? But I asked Laura, I was like, hey, do you have anything on where Ryan Brown is? Just like in this, and I think she's at 10 of 12 months of a year since that injury. Laura said she's at the sort of final bit of it, right? Final bit of that, recovery from that. She is in team sessions, and I've seen that, so that's nice. Obviously, again, there's some hurdles she'll have to jump through, but there's that. It's not much, but it's something. At least I know some people like to at least have something. Cassie Miller, um, the open media practice they had last week, they had a Sounders Academy player there, a goalkeeper, and I was like, why is this man here? Which can be used in a lot of settings. I was like, why is this man here? And I looked over at the Ryan, the PR guy, and he goes, oh, I don't know. Needed another body. And I'm like, okay, you're supposed to know everything. Um, And so I watch the goalkeepers because I'm nosy, and it is an open media practice after all. And Cassie, your backup goalkeeper to Claudia Dickey, acquired in the Lynn Biandolo trade, is sort of working her leg out. You ever see an athlete go down and they're like, she's laying on her back and they're kind of working a leg out? Yeah. I'm like, hey, that explains the man. Because otherwise it was Dickey Prohaska, your third goalkeeper on the roster, and then the man. So I thought that's kind of weird. And then she was listed out on the availability report with a leg injury. So I don't know if that's something that's long-term serious. Um, I don't know how much stock you take it into your backup goalkeeper, but I think it's notable. Um, so
I definitely think I have some things to say about
uh-oh.
injuries.
All right.
um, no, I definitely, obviously the hope is that Claudia continues uninjured throughout the season, um, because she is playing fantastic. Um, I will bring up what you mentioned we might want to bring up, which is that Laura Harvey very much thinks she should be called into the U.S. Women's National Team.
We will talk
Um,
about this. That's
oh,
going to
okay,
be its
so
own
I'll
thing.
I'll make my other points then. Um, so, as long as Claudia is healthy, it's not a huge issue, but it is definitely something to keep an eye on if it's longer
Yeah.
term. In terms of Coco and Jess being out, when I was writing again my story, sorry, I can't say it seriously, otherwise I feel like even more of a dick. Um,
My
but
story?
my story. Um, but she was talking after a game about, you know, getting all of their players getting all of their players healthy being one of the most important things. And once they had everyone healthy and could sort of find that ideal mix of youth and veteran players, that they would be one of the best teams in the league and they could beat anybody. Um, and, you know, last year, she was saying arguably our best team played a lot. Like they had some injuries, but they didn't necessarily have, they were able to play what was technically their best 11
Mm.
for quite a few of the games. And this year with Lou having missed games and then Jess being out, and then now that Coco is out, um, you know, I Coco in particular, I think has been an impressive spark off the bench and a very creative player, and I think that has been missed at times
Mm.
since she's been injured. And then obviously Jess is just a brilliant player. I think Sam Meza has made her injury much more tolerable, and I'm hopeful that you know how well Sam Meza has been playing, um, defensively, offensively, everything outside of the Houston game, which was just sort of a anomaly for everybody. That allows them to really take whatever time is needed for Jess to be healthy. Um, you know, there can be a tendency to rush players back if you feel like
Mm.
you really, really need them in a certain position. And I
Yeah.
think that Sam has done a fantastic job of filling in for Jess in a very, massive shoes to fill. But when she's out there, I'm like, all right, I could be looking at like a younger, faster Jess Fishlock. Like,
To be matter of fact, kind of smaller boots. That she's kind of short.
okay.
Sorry,
I'm
Jess.
also
She's
short.
killing me. Oh.
I think they're like the same height as I am.
Nah.
But
And she's
so
played
I
well in partnership with Haz as well. I mean,
yeah,
Haz
no,
has
she
mentioned how much she enjoys that partnership and how it's grown.
absolutely. And I think, the benefit of having Has back there pretty consistently is that she has an existing on-field relationship with Jess from playing with Wales. So whenever you are able to integrate Jess back in, that should be a relatively seamless transition because they're not having to figure out how to play with a brand new player and like sort of fit them back in mid-season. Like they know each other, they know what to expect from Jess. Um, and the Coco injury was one that really kind of took me by surprise. Like I was like, oh crap, didn't realize she was on the injury report. Don't love that. Because they still have options offensively. I would love to see a little more of Maddie Mercado. I think
Yes.
Emery has been a bit up and down, but I really we know what we can get out of her, and I think they're going to want more from her. But Coco just brought something a little different. Can't totally put my finger on it right now, to be honest. Um, but there was just always something about the fight that she played with and the creativity and the willingness to just kind of try some stuff. I think
Hmm.
more than other players at times, she was willing to just be like, yeah, I'm just gonna like kind of try this tricky move. Maybe it didn't work out, but you never know until you try. And then maybe
We
the third
ball.
time she tries it does work out. Like she's still been adjusting to the level of the NWSL.
Sure.
Um, but I think I do think those injuries have been detrimental to the team. Not that there aren't still very talented players, but I think those are pretty big misses, right? Those are not players that are like sitting at the end of your bench, never playing.
Yeah.
That is one, your franchise player, and then it is, a young player who has come in and, brought experience from a different league and a sort of young desire to try and be better. Like she's a very hard worker. She's very sweet. Um, so I look forward to hopefully when everyone is healthy and you can kind of see like what the true sort of height of this team can be, because obviously everyone deals with injuries.
Mm.
Um, and how you deal with those injuries is often going to define your season. And they have to, they have to be able to play with injured players. Um, but I do think that it will change things when they are back.
I think,
So
and thank you for you didn't know I was going to say that, but I wanted to, with the injury report, kind of ask what you'd seen from Coco because it felt like, I think Coco had dealt with, she landed on the injury report with one of the first four matches, but outside of that, she'd played the rest, and then this one lately has taken her out. So, and obviously, it's like, hey, we got to just get this thing figured out. Um, yeah, no, I'd like what she'd, been able to bring. I was really curious with the group that they kind of brought in mid-season, kind of mid-season last year. You know what I mean? With
yeah,
like
during
the
the summer window,
AMC. Yeah, thank you. The Coco. I'm like, okay, we kind of saw bits and pieces of you last year, like, and especially with how hectic, obviously, getting the sale finished was,
right?
and that year was. I'm like, I'm gonna give you a hall pass, essentially. Like,
Yeah.
I know that's not really a thing, but at least with the two nerds on the screen here, like, and
Hmm.
how we run things, I'm giving you a hall pass.
Yeah.
Um, you know, and I think Anna Maria's had a pretty solid year. She doesn't get quite the sort of appreciation that I think she should get with the way she's able to open up space when she's on the field. Uh,
The thing, like the way I would describe, AMC's, which is my favorite shortened version of the name in the NWSL right
it's very
now.
nice. Yeah.
The thing that the way I would kind of describe her is that she doesn't necessarily do anything exceptional or magical or like you're shocked by it, but she does everything very solidly. She works hard. She's a tall presence, which
Yes.
is beneficial. She's a very physical presence.
Hmm.
She's not really one to be knocked off the ball. Um, and it was after, I don't remember which game it was after. It might have been after the Kansas City game, where Laura was complimenting her defense and being like, they didn't do anything outstanding, but they were solid and they did what they needed to do. And they're like, everyone wants to see the magic of Dabinia and Marta and Rose Lavelle, and like you
Yep.
want that fun stuff, but you also like those players can't do their magic, try whatever the heck I want if you don't have those very solid players who are just there to do their job.
Yes.
And Anna Maria is, Switzerland's all-time leading scorer. She's a very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Capable player.
Mm.
And, she doesn't need to fill a massive role for the Reign, but she can, you know, see a good pass in behind and make it when she maybe hasn't been involved in the offense in that game. Or she can just sort of be positionally solid from her experience, particularly playing wingback again at Barcelona, because that was at least the main place that I'd seen her play wingback. Because I'm pretty sure she plays mostly forward for Switzerland if she's their all-time leading goal scorer. Just a guess. Um, but I think she's just solid. You're not going to get the golasso out of her, but you are going to get what you need. And there are certain games where especially in tight games, like that is just sort of what you need. You need someone who's just there and doing their job,
I mean,
and just connecting the pass. I think it was the North Carolina game where she was sort of part of the build up to Jess's goal,
mm,
like where she just, she knows where she is in space and she will try and make the right pass. And she has a pretty good idea of what the right pass is. Um,
just a
and
very sound player, right? Like,
yeah, someone that can not play 3 games in a row and then you can start her and you're like, I have no doubt that she's going to be solid here.
hmm hmm
Because that's what it was against Kansas City. She hadn't played in a couple games, and then suddenly she was the starting wing back,
Here
and
you
you're like,
go.
oh, I
Yeah.
guess AMC is back, and there she is playing wing back. I had forgotten that she could play that, but she can, and there is a lot of value to having a player that will just be ready and be ready and be professional and be knowledgeable and calm and solid. Like there's just a lot of they're not going to get the praise. They're not going to get a ton of the attention, but that doesn't mean that they're not contributing.
Yeah. And I think because, with the additions to this league in the past few years, people see what they do, and I understand it. I mean, if the sale had gone through normally, maybe we'd have one of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But and so people get caught up in wanting that, and I understand that for sure, right? I mean, sports are typically defined by their best players, right? Um, which isn't a bad thing, but I think especially in this world now, of social media, like you get so well, it's somewhat instant gratification. You want to see that. You want to see the flashy pass, the banger goal.
Yeah, you want to see the
Um,
highlight.
you want to see the highlight. Exactly. And, maybe she's not necessarily doing that, but like you said, there's just so many things to like from what she can bring from you. Like you said, bringing her off essentially into a game cold where she hasn't been, in the 18. Well, she's in the 18, but she hasn't been
Yeah.
starting, or getting consistent minutes. Like, you know, it just, yeah, there's a lot like that physical presence, it's just another player, another forward. And I feel bad because it feels like so often, not you and I specifically, but maybe like kind of stringers who come in and talk to these players, these younger forwards like a Darlene, like an Adamas, and they're like, hey, how is it to learn from Lynn Biondolo? It's like, well, Anna Maria Srnagorcevic is also a very like knowledgeable forward. Like she's not a slouch, you
No.
know.
Yeah.
I feel like she gets kind of left out of that. So yeah. But anyway, her and then talking about Coco, I to go back to the like injury up. This is gonna be like an injury report segment. I had to write that
Mhm.
down for when I cut these into segments. Um, because it's been tough and it was really exciting. I liked what I saw from her in the minute she got before this most recent stint, and it sucks because
Yeah.
I'm sure for her, she's feeling more comfortable this year. Um, you know, like as you mentioned, being able to try things, feeling the comfort to try things because there are teams, coaches in sports where maybe players don't feel safe trying things. They don't feel
Mhm.
comfortable trying things. Being able to, oh, sorry. The Sounders match is happening and the player just said a bad word. I was very shocked. He said
Shocking. We
fuck
haven't
off.
done any of that. Not me,
No,
never.
I mean just who would say this sort of shit, you know? Um yeah, so yeah, anyway,
We're
I wanted to get
funny.
the Coco sort of look here for where we're at. So anyway, that kind of you brought up Claudia. Laura after the Houston match, for those who did not see the presser or were not there, like us. Yeah, we need to get you one of those. See if
I
we can get
do
you one of those and have you have it
just
on the
to
show.
just to hold up during the podcast whenever we talk about her.
Like
Terrific.
with
Someone, please tell me how I can get
we'll
this.
we'll try to find the people for this. Uh after I don't remember if the question was about Claudia because Laura like has a tendency to
I don't think
get
it
asked
was.
about one thing and then talk. No, that's right. Because I was like, I didn't expect this. Um,
Actually, no, maybe Nico did ask about Claudia.
maybe I might poke around and see the otter while we do this, but
Laura went on a lot of tangents, so
she did. She can kind of do that, and at
if she
least
has
she's like
something she wants to say, she's gonna fit it in.
she's gonna say it. Doesn't matter what you ask, really.
Yeah.
Um, she had very high praise for Claudia Dickey, which I don't think is, unwarranted praise, right?
Mhm.
But she basically, and I'll get the thing, and Bella can correct me, which she does often, which is not unwarranted either.
Mhm.
About she made the case for Claudia to be the U.S. Women's National Team goalkeeper.
Or at
Um,
least be called into camp.
or yes, called into camp as well. I'll get this. But I'll get the official one and I can get the verbatim. But
And I
uh
can just start blabbing.
yeah, just what do you think about that? Because we go from, you know, one player in Fallon Tullis Joyce who the kind of mystery around that, and the weird situation there, who now has gone on and has, played for the US and is having a great career. I mean, I don't think anyone has any reason in the Reign fan base or us to not like Fallon. Like she was great. Right. And so I love seeing the success she's well, maybe not because she's at Man United. Like the Arsenal blood runs very heavily. Laura would agree.
Yeah, I will root
So
for
would
any
Kim
team
Little.
that has a player I like on it. I have no loyalty in the English league whatsoever.
So you go from that, and then people like Claudia Dickey, why? Right? And it you just watch her in some of these moments and you say, all right, she saved her ass.
Yeah.
Um, there were the rough moments last year. You talk about largely, I mean, again, and largely it's correct, but and she had a injury stint last year where Laurel Ivory had to come in. And I know that had to be frustrating. But yeah, I mean, your thoughts on I guess what you remember from that rant. I'm sorry, I keep saying that from that chunk of words, and I
Hmm.
don't know if you agree or not, because I mean I know you do more than just rain in terms of the football, so I will look at this. But
I
yeah.
definitely do agree with Laura. I think I talked about it when we did the episode when she was called into U.S. Women's National Team camp. Um, I think last year the defense in front of her was not very good, and it made her look bad. She would come up with a couple brilliant saves, and other times she'd kind of be sold down the river and not really have a chance. And I think this year has given her the opportunity to show that even if she's not making 10 saves a game, she can come up with that one big save when her team needs it, even if they've been defensively solid the rest of the time. And Laura brought up that one of the sort of knocks on her, um, quote unquote, in the past had been that she didn't make the big saves. But at the same time, there weren't really big saves to make because they weren't super in games. Like it wasn't like she was the reason they lost. Um, and I think, the North Carolina game in particular stands out to me just because of the sheer number of saves she made at the end of that game
Yeah.
to truly like she is truly the reason they won that game. At the end there, they had so many chances to score, and those were not easy saves. Like against Kansas City, she was talking about how most of the chances just rolled to her and she didn't really have to do anything. But other games, she has really had to stand on her head. I think Portland, she made a couple really good saves too. Like I think she's a very talented shot stopper, and she's also much better with her feet than a lot of other goalkeepers are. I think she has that going for her. That's the reason why it's part of the reason why people like Mandy Hott in that position is because of her sort of her long ball ability. Um, but I think that the U.S. is a team that really likes to build, through their defense into their offense. Um, and Claudia is a great goalkeeper for that. As much as I love Fallon, like that is the thing she struggled with. She wasn't quite as good at finding feet with her passes, um, or making the right move in those moments. And I think Claudia is so solid with her feet, that it's really a massive benefit. In addition to what is an incredible goalkeeping ability. And I had asked her after the Kansas City game, even though she didn't make a ton of massive saves in that game, if she was feeling more confident this year, because she didn't have to deal with that injury. And, she talked about just, sort of putting in a lot of work with the defense and everyone wanting to be better, and her confidence almost coming from the people in front of her, like knowing that they have confidence in her and that she has confidence in them, and being able to trust each other, which I think is something that they didn't always have last year as much as they tried. um, you know when someone scores, it's easy to sort of lose that trust. And um, I think the talent has always been there for her, but the way the team has performed this year has allowed it to be much more outwardly visible than it was in the past. I still thought she was fantastic last year. Like, would I have immediately thought of calling her up to the U.S. Women's National Team? Probably not. But again, that's because of like you're looking at the results and you're losing by multiple goals, and it's like you're tempted to say that's on the goalkeeper, but it's not. It was not on Claudia. And I think she this year, being healthy and having the time to work with her defense and find her own confidence, she has been outstanding. I mean, like absolutely outstanding. I can't say enough good things about how important she has been this year, and I think will continue to be throughout the season.
It has been really interesting to see her evolution, here in Seattle. Because I mean, you got to give credit to, I think, both the Reign for um, being able to find these players, right? I mean, I'm specifically talking about the last two keepers and Fallon and Claudia, but to identify that player and then to work with the talent that they have and develop them into what they are, right? I mean, both sides of that is critical. Um, to watch both of their journeys again, I think I remember telling you they acquired Fallon at some point during my first year covering the club, and I was like, "Who is this kid from New York? Like got a long name. Like, what
Yeah,
is this?"
it was when Vlatko was still the coach, right? Or was it Fareed?
I think it was Fareed. That was the first coach I was ever like around.
Yeah, because I guess he was there. He was the coach for the Challenge Cup, the original Challenge Cup.
Yes,
Right, because Vlatko left in 2019 after the 2019 World Cup. Sorry, that was me just like trying to remember my history because so funny that just funny to me that the coaches of the Reign have been pretty much Laura Harvey, Vlatko, Laura Harvey. Fareed doesn't exist in this.
no,
I think he
and
only coached
for
half of a regular season before they like got rid of him. Like he coached
something
the
like
Challenge
that,
Cup and then they came back the next regular season. Yeah, because it was the middle of 2021 after the Olympics where they're like, Laura, come back. So yeah, he coached like less than half of a regular season.
I remember I was working a Mariners game at the time, and I was watching the match on my phone, which technically I shouldn't have been doing, but now I do this for a living, so it doesn't matter, I guess. And I remember, I think it was before the match, seeing actually that they had dismissed him, and it was Sam, I think, as the
Yeah,
interim.
we
Anyway,
love Sam.
but you get what I'm saying, right? I
Wait,
remember
sorry,
seeing
can I
this.
mention real quick? Have you seen the clip of how he got the red card in the Angel City game? Because if you
I think
haven't, it's my
you and
favorite
I
thing.
both saw it.
But did you
So
see the one like the NWSL on the NWSL broadcast? They showed the actual footage of him fully running out onto the field, not just a picture. Like how far he ran out into the center circle.
I need to watch that. All
I
right,
think they showed it on the Prime broadcast last weekend.
I will have to go back and watch that. Is he back or no?
I think he served his suspension this weekend, so he should be back next week.
God bless Sam Lady. Um, quick other Sam note. I remember you and we were at the Club America friendly at Starfire, in a tiny press box at Starfire. Who was sitting in the fan seating right in front of us? Sam Lady. I was like, what the fuck? He turned around because that last section is like pretty much level almost. And he's just like kind of looking back in there. I'm like, can you see through the like can you see? It was very weird.
I mean, he was Laura's
Um,
assistant for like 7 years before she went to Utah. No, seven is too many. Five.
I mean,
He was her assistant for a long time.
just the fact though that he was right in front of the press box, I thought was the funniest thing. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah, to go from Fallon to someone I didn't know who she was coming out of New York, and then it was Buati at the time. That was an experience for sure. Um, and then
I
Claudia, who I
forgot about
knew
that.
that yeah, I knew like following with because they drafted Claudia, if I remember
They drafted
correctly.
Claudia. They signed Fallon from the French league.
Yes. So, for them to do that, um, it says a lot about what they've been able to do, even with different goalkeeper coaches. I know they've changed. I know it's Lloyd now, right? So, um, I can give you it's a long chunk, but I'll try to get the best parts of what Laura said here. Um, she kind of started off with, yeah, she was asked about expanding on Claudia's performance. I honestly think Claudia has been, if not the best goalkeeper in the league this season. I could be getting this wrong because Otter doesn't always get it right. She said she's definitely up there. Sure, I'm biased. God bless Laura, but she has grown a lot. She's matured a lot. Me and her had a really good conversation after the Angel City match. Went and watched. Oh yeah, because Laura went and watched the U.S. national team train, and she came back and said, "There's no way you shouldn't be in that camp." Um, and this was kind of interesting. She says the reasons you're not in it is it's the things that you can change and it's in your control. So basically like kind of motivating, right? Um Laura goes, I'm not picking the team. It's not my job. Yeah, Laura, we know. She's so funny. But I think that if she goes on, she continues on the trajectory that she's on. I believe she's got every single tool to be able to be this country's not so. Initially, there she says just to make it, but then she
Mhm.
goes on to say every tool to be this country's number one goalkeeper. I think the ceiling for her is still really high. She's very young, loads of ceiling. What she's shown in this year is consistency and performances. I would agree with that. I don't think Laura cares if I agree, but yeah. You mentioned the big saves. Um, so you know, um, yeah, I mean, both in hockey with like these guys, in hockey and in soccer, I know that one of the big things about like a great goalkeeper, goalie, is if they can make the big saves. And
Yeah.
yeah, so yeah,
I mean,
no,
that's
I
that's
mean,
why Alyssa Nair was the number one for a while, right? Is because she would face
Unk.
no shots the entire game and then save a penalty. Like something that's incredibly tough to do. And I think part of Laura's point is that the goalkeeper, because Nair retired from international duty, the goalkeeper position is so wide open. And not only is Claudia talented, but it would benefit the US to get her into camp even before you maybe think that she can be the number one.
Mm,
Because her ceiling is still so high, you want her training in that environment. You want her training with your players in your system. And to do, it's sort of the same reason why we saw Alyssa Thompson and Giselle Thompson called into the US women's national team and then not get called back in for a while because it was like, all right, we want to like see how these young players do in our system. Okay, maybe they're not quite ready yet, but now we can like tell them what they need to do, or they can have a better idea of what they need to do, and they can get an idea of the system. Like, it's the same reason they have the futures camp is because
mm.
you want to evaluate, you want to see how those players are. And I think that Claudia absolutely deserves that chance. I don't think there's any, I agree with Laura. I don't think there's any goalkeeper that has been, notably better than her. At least that is an American goalkeeper. I think there are, some other goalkeepers of other nationalities that have been very good, but obviously they can't be on the U.S. women's national team. So, like I think that the position should be wide open, and the performances that Claudia has put on this season should make her near the top of the list to be called into camp again. And I don't, maybe Laura knows that Claudia hasn't been called into the upcoming camp, and that's why she was like making a comment about it.
Oh, here's your pitch. Okay.
But
Yeah.
well, no, I mean like they usually know if they've been called in ahead of time. So it's possible that Laura knows that Claudia wasn't called in and is salty about it, and that's why she talks about it.
Pissed. Yeah, not like
But
pitching to people, but rather
or it
pissed
could
about
just
it.
be like, or it could be her pitch ahead of knowing the roster. I have no way of knowing. Laura, let me know. Um,
Laura,
but
hello.
um, but I think she absolutely should get the call up. I think she absolutely deserves it. Um, and if you want to see what a wonderful, like, sweet, funny person she is, go check out our Players and Puppies video with her.
I should find a clip and just put it in right here. We'll see. Um, I'm sorry. Anytime I think about that episode, I think about Laurel Ivory telling a bee to lock
Lock
in.
in.
Lock in. God bless Laurel.
All time favorite.
It was cool to see her on the pitch for that the Kansas City match. I know she didn't get in. I think there was excitement in one of the during that match. Sorry, very brief look back at that match.
Mhm.
Kansas City was making a change, and one of the PR folks was like, I think it was 85. It's like 85. It's Laurel, and I'm like, that isn't. They're not changing goalies
Yeah,
right now.
I doubt it.
I think we just wanted to see Laurel, which is fair.
Yeah.
So her only flaw is that she supports Boston teams. It's just, we can't all be perfect.
Well, and that she no longer plays for Seattle, but we will forgive that because
That's
we love her and she's wonderful.
yes, agreed with Bella. Again,
And the dog in that video, Otter, is available for adoption still. If you go ahead and watch that video and think he's really cute like they did, because he is very cute. Big muscle man, favorite boy.
God bless him. Yeah, that's right. Okay, now I'm remembering him. Jesus. Um,
The one that was small but all muscles.
he was a thick boy.
Yeah.
I kind of want to go into sort of where your feelings are generally, I guess, with this club because you know, these past four matches, it's a good stretch, right? I mean, I know we've talked about the defense, we've talked about some individual players, and if you want to talk about some other individual players, in the sess, feel free. Like during one of the things you were talking, I think we were talking about with the forwards, like Jordyn Huitema. I know not necessarily us, but some media, I'm sure, Datter, and I know there were questions in some of the press conferences about her not scoring as much last year, right? You're forward. People are going to ask you why they're not scoring, right? Um, she, you know, they didn't end up resulting in direct chances per se, and obviously not assists. She had some nice balls ahead in dangerous possession last. Like you remember the one I'm talking about? She's like falling down, like sprinting, and she still gets a through ball up. I think to Lynn, and I was like, holy shit! How did you one have the wherewithal to direct this, to a suitable through ball to your forward, but also to like have the strength, and obviously you're a soccer player, you're gonna have the leg strength, but to get it up like so it's not just a limp ball. It was fascinating. Like I really would have loved if it would have been a goal because then it would have been a highlight just to highlight the assist itself,
Yeah,
right? So,
I actually do think that Jordyn has gotten stronger on the ball this season.
mm,
She still has those times where people like leap over her back and foul her.
yeah, Jesus Christ.
um, but I think she's been better at holding up the ball and not just getting knocked off the ball or turning it over. I don't think anyone compares to Lynn in that respect because like there were some times in the Houston game or the Kansas City game, and there were like three defenders around her, and somehow she still brought it down off her chest and like dribbled 10 feet away and then found a teammate. And I was just like, how in the actual heck did you find your way out of that? Um, but I think Jordyn's such an interesting case because you do want her scoring goals. She wants to score goals. Laura said that Jordyn came up to her specifically and was like, I want to score goals this season.
Yes, I remember that one. Yep.
Um, but at the same time, she is not, and I think that the chance at BFC was kind of an example of this. She's not really the player that you send in behind, like
No,
running in behind. You what
no.
you want is her making late runs into the box, attacking things with her head. Like,
Hmm.
as much as I don't want to reduce her talents to height, being like 6 foot or 5'11", whatever she is a massive advantage in a league where quite a few people are not particularly tall. And she's a very good header of the ball, and we saw that in the goal that she scored. Um, and the goal that she, against Kansas City as well, it was her header down back across the goal on the corner kick that
Mm,
led to Lynn's goal. Like, and that should not be. I don't think she technically got the assist for that one, because there was sort of a block in between. Um, but I think she can draw defenders on set pieces and corner kicks and anything where she's, we see it. The reason she gets fouled so much and with people jumping over the back of her is because they're trying to not let her head the ball on. Because one other thing she's very good at is someone sending a long ball and then her flicking it on with her head to a Lynn or a Maddie running in behind. And that's a skill that not a ton of people can do, to be honest. Like, that's a very difficult thing to do. And so I think not having her like as the nine has been beneficial for her because she's not really an out and out playmaker, but she's also not an out and out nine. Like,
mm.
you want her in the box on services for sure. Like, you absolutely want her on the end of services, no question in my mind. But you I think that she's been pretty good at holding the ball up and linking up play with Lynn and Maddie and whoever else is up top and just playing more of a connector role.
Mm.
and then sort of being there in the moments she needs to be there. I also would be, remiss to not mention something that Laura also brings up a lot, which is her defensive effort. She presses the hell out of the back line of the other team for 90 minutes. I mean, her she runs like crazy, and Laura is a coach that wants her team high pressing a lot. She asks her team to run a lot, especially her forwards and her midfielders. And, I think maybe part of the reason you don't see quite as much offensive production is because she's putting so much into that defense. And I don't really want to say that putting that much effort into defense is a bad thing, because I think it's a very good and important thing to do, especially on a team for Laura Harvey where she tends to be pretty defense first, right? It's always like you need to protect your goal first, and then hopefully you want to score, obviously, but there's always a focus on being as solid defensively as possible and not having to go on and score 3 goals. Um, so I'll be interested to see. She's healthy this season. I think she like had one game where she missed like a couple at the beginning, and then she played like 45 minutes against Portland. It was like her and Lynn switched off the halves
Oh, yes.
because
Yeah.
they were coming back from injury around the same time.
Mm.
Um, and last year she dealt with a pretty bad back injury, which is never easy. Um, so I think, as she, continues to stay healthy, and, as the whole team gets time to gel with Lynn, I think we'll see things that are better and better. And I think, you know, that one of those like through balls to Lynn or Maddie will end up being a goal, because it's a very surprisingly strong skill set of hers. I think it's easy to like look at Jordyn and think, oh, she's just going to head the ball in the goal, and that's sort of like
Yeah.
all she's good for. But that's not true at all. She works so much on the defensive end, and she can be really big in the build up, and then also being either someone to draw defenders away from other players, or just be the person on the end of a service, even if it is knocking it back across the goal. Right? You need to have someone back there who's doing that, because otherwise it just goes
Yeah.
out. Like, and I think, as much as the sort of the corner kick takers have surprised me a bit this season, I think the services have been pretty solid, and they've created some good chances out of them, and she's a big part of that. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this season progresses for her.
I also like I get that this is more of maybe the optimism and hope side of me, which I know hope is what kills you. Um, but she's very young.
Oh yeah,
Like her
isn't she
time,
younger than us?
the same age.
Okay, that doesn't make me feel that
Um,
much better.
no, because then I see her and I see other athletes in the city that are our age, and I'm like, hey, 24. Yeah.
Okay, let's not remind ourselves. Back to what we're
Uh,
saying.
what, you weren't playing for Team Canada and professionally when you, well, I
Was
was gonna
like
say when you
18,
were this age, but we
17.
are the same age.
Yeah,
Um,
we are the same age. Thank you.
I always like when there's so much criticism of a player, and their abilities, right? And what they can do, right? Like you talked about what they can
Mhm.
do and not trying to reduce her. Ouchie. Um, like I was like, hey, like players have growth, players have career arcs, like that is very much a thing. Um, so hey, maybe she's able to add different things to her game, right? Like there's the time for that. Like you mentioned, there was the conversation that she had with Laura about wanting to score more. Um, and not just I want the ball, but like help me get to this point, right? Um, which I don't think she said that, but I don't know. Some folks could, it wasn't a selfish thing. It was like um, you know, I think it was just I want to help us win more. I want to score more, and so I want you to do what you can to help me get to that point. Similar to what Emily Sonnet said when Emily Sonnet was here and says, "Make me the best six in the world." So yeah, it's interesting with Jordyn, and I like to have that sort of hope and belief in a player. Um, that they can grow. Like another one, and maybe it's because baseball's on the mind because I had Mariners today, but the criticism of a guy like a Julio Rodriguez, he is I think 24 as well. I don't know if he's 25 yet. Nope, he's 24 years old, 24 years of age, and the guy is, uh, you know, despite having a slow year, like so much of the criticism for Julio is around the expectation for a superstar and the expectation he puts on himself. I don't think that's fair. Statistically, he's still going to be one of the more valuable players in baseball, you know, and there's criticism of him, and he's young. Like, he will learn. Jordyn will learn to do things. Like, there, so many of these young players, you could have Knox underneath the children on this Reign roster. They'll learn, right? So I don't know. I just always like to have that hope that players can go back to what I just said about Emily Sonnet. Emily Sonnet had to learn things to become that
Mm-hmm.
six that she is, right? And she's respect to Emily. She's not young,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I don't know. I hate when it is like reductive um conversation about players that they can't do this, they'll never do this. I'm like, how do you know that? I don't know.
I think that the difficulty for Jordyn very specifically is that from a very, very young age, media consistently referred to her as like the next Christine Sinclair, which is
Ah, yeah,
putting a massive expectation on a very young player to be something that the world will likely never see again. Like Christine
yeah,
Sinclair is a very one of a kind player, talent, playing at a time when maybe she could get a few more goals. Like, the games aren't quite as close as they maybe are now. Like things were a little bit less competitive, like with, outside of the top teams. Um, and because I had talked to Jordyn ahead of when she went to the 2023 World Cup for Canada, actually.
yes, yeah.
And I had asked her about, being called that. And you could kind of tell when I brought it up, not that, she took it as an insult or was upset about it, but that it was not something she wanted to be known as. She wants to be known as her own individual player with her own individual skills who is going to accomplish her own things, even if it isn't, you know, she's honored to be, put in, up against that kind of iconic player and name, but it puts an expectation on her to be the kind of goal scorer that she's just not really. Like she's not the same type of player as Christine Sinclair. I think if anything, she's maybe playing a more similar role to like late career Christine Sinclair, or where she's, like kind of playing high midfield and making a lot of those late runs into the box. Um, but other than, I mean, Christine Sinclair is just such a unique player that I don't think it's really fair to compare her to anybody skill or accomplishment wise.
Mm,
And I think that that's a really tough burden that Jordyn has had to carry for a long time. And, I assume and hope that she sort of worked through that with family or friends or a therapist, and doesn't feel too much of that expectation. Um, but I do think people have an unrealistic expectation of her. Not, not saying you should expect her to be less talented, but I think you're expecting something different from her than what she is going to give. Like you're expecting constant goals like she's an Alex Morgan. And that's just not quite who she is. And that's, okay and good even, right? Like I think, another thing Laura talked about was she has endless time for Jordyn because of how hard she works and how much she wants to improve. And I think that goes a long way and will continue to go a long way in her improving. And I think from a media perspective, I mean, Laura also talked about, her maybe getting a kick in the butt from some of the media coverage last season. Laura wasn't necessarily saying it in a negative way, but it being like it sort of maybe pushed her to add skill sets or focus on different skill sets. Um, and while I think it's great for her to add aspects to her game, I think it is not beneficial for media to have specific expectations of her. Like if it's
Mm,
Lynn Biondolo and she's not scoring a bunch of goals, okay, yeah, I'd ask about it because she is a goal scorer. But if she's assisting the whole time, even if she's not scoring, that's also what she does. So she's still, contributing. Like Maddie Darlene is, if you look at her stats from North Carolina, it doesn't like stand out as a ton of goals scored. She scored a good amount of goals, but it's not like an insane number like a Temba Chawinga scored last year. It's a consistent performer who's going to give you a couple of season, maybe more like six, and is also a very talented assister. And I think, part of the reason they added Lynn was to have that finisher for all of the talented assisters that they have on the team.
yeah.
And, there is absolutely a benefit to Jordyn working on her finishing and, the whole team working on their finishing. I have no issue with that. And I hope they continue to work on that and that Jordyn does get those goals that she wants. But I do hope that people expect something that is more in line with the actual kind of player she is and the way that she has impacted the game, not assuming that she can't be better or that she isn't very talented, but just being more realistic about what it is you're expecting from her. Like, it's just unfair to. I think the expectations on her were just ridiculously high. Even if she, says that it's okay and she wants to push herself to that, great. If that motivates you, okay. But I think for me at least, I hope to focus on the other aspects of her game and, celebrate if she scores a goal, absolutely, but not think of that as like her main contribution. Because I just don't think it is. She can contribute goals and you want her to,
Mhm.
but it's not necessarily why she's on the team. It's not like she doesn't score goals, so she's not contributing. That would be like a gross misunderstanding of what is happening. So, hopefully that confidence continues for her this season. She was really excited after scoring that goal against Bay, which was really lovely to see. Um, so I hope she can continue to kind of find some of that joy. And, the other thing is, again, just like continuing to play with Lynn. It's a young team, had several injured players at the beginning of the season. Once those players came back, then Jess and Coco got injured.
And we're only in match, well, not going into it, but we've only played 8 matches. Like,
Yeah, there's still a lot of time for this team to really get to know each other
like,
because it also like, you can implement things during preseason, but you can only implement so much. And I,
yeah.
and I think it was rough to have worked with Lynn all of preseason or most of preseason. She was still kind of coming back from an injury, so I actually don't think that they had a ton of time with her. But then, like, not being able to start the season with her, like, it's the reality of getting used to playing with players you've never played before. It doesn't matter how talented they are, and they are extremely talented. It's just going to take some time, and hopefully, it eventually results in more goals. But in the meantime, they are going to continue playing some very strong defense and keeping themselves in games regardless of how much they score, while certainly being frustrated with themselves if they don't score more.
But Bella, goals change games, Bella.
Goals do change games, but that also means you have to not let in the goals.
Yeah, goals change games either way.
Yeah, both sides. It goes both
Um,
ways.
and I mean, you kind of touch on it there, but yeah, do you have general thoughts? Is that your general, are those your general thoughts on where this club is right now? It sounds like thinking about it back, it does sound like kind of a synopsis of where this group is at. Um, yeah, because they are young. They are young. They will continue to learn. Like I feel like looking at this roster up down, you've gotten some contributions from players that maybe didn't have the years they wanted to last year. like an Angharad James Turner. Like seeing that this year, I think that was one of my big questions
Yeah,
was what the hell
absolutely.
is Has going to give you, right? I was
Yeah, she's
thinking
been
about
fantastic.
this as we've been talking. Um, like uh, someone said this in the press box the other day. I think it was Portland match, but they go, "Oh, the Sam Mezzo was on loan last year. Like she's so good. Why wasn't she here?" I was like, I don't think she gets to this point without that loan,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
Um, he's been able to, as you talked about earlier, bring you this stuff, bring you this effort with Jess gone. You know, seeing Maddie Darlene and just like the excitement for the player she can be going forward, as we talked about. You know, I don't know. There's just I was kind of very like cautious, I think I'd say, coming into this season with this club, right? And I feel a lot better just seeing the way the defense has performed, seeing what you can get out of these young players and have gotten. We haven't even seen some of them that much. Like we've kind of hardly seen Ainsley McCammon. Like
I was shocked when
little,
she came into the Houston game.
you see what I'm saying? Like we've seen very little of her. We've seen Emery in spots, and again, it's a long season, so I don't know. I'm feeling good about the rain. Like I really am. And I was maybe I got sucked into a little bit of the NWSL, like the big massive additions for clubs, right? I'm like, where is mine? I want big shiny toy. Like, where is
Well,
this?
that is Lynn Biondolo, and we're not
Oh,
going to overlook that.
yes.
But
No, you get what I'm saying, right? I
yes,
was like, I was like, okay, you
it was
traded for
not
Lin.
several of those. It was like you got Lynn Biondolo, and that was sort of your one big
You're gonna
one.
like it. I
Yeah,
think part of it too was it was a trade, so you lost Jalen Howell, and I was like, all
yeah,
right, like in the first place, I wasn't super psyched to lose a Bethany Balcer, but
yeah.
I was starting to come around on the Jalen Howell train, and then Howell's, and I'm like, all right, where am I? Um, so all that to say, I was worried with the sort of acquisition tab, because I was like, yes, this is Lynn Biondolo, I know what she can do,
Yeah.
but is her are you going to levy or scoring improving on one player? I hope not. I think is
Right.
exactly what I said. Um, and I feel a lot better about it. I think the club trusted what they saw from within, and they just felt that if this group could improve upon themselves, then they would take a leap, and they're seeing that to an extent. So I don't know. That's my thought on where we're at. A lot can change, but I don't know. I feel good.
Yeah, what my mind kind of goes to, and I don't remember if it was Laura or if it was Lynn who said this, but they sort of talked about, you know, maybe we're not like winning a championship this year. We're okay with that. Like we don't think that we're immediately going from 11th to winning a championship, but the aim is to like maybe become, getting a championship the next year. Like they do expect that this year is going to be a year of growth.
Mm,
And while they are going to go for the playoffs and going to, try and make a deep run, they're not expecting that. Like they're very much, because even, as we later found out, Lynn's contract is more than a
yeah,
year.
exactly what I thought of.
And,
Yes.
several players signed to like 3-year contracts. And, as much as I still think this is probably Jess's last season, just because of how much she struggled with injury recently. Um, and I would love to send her out with the championship as much as I would have loved to send Pino out with the championship. Um, they weren't. It was not let's get a bunch of snazzy 1-year signings and and hope we win a championship that year. And I had talked to Leslie Gallimore, the general manager, about it too before the season started. And part of that is Sounders ownership bringing a long-term vision into the club for the first time in a long time.
Mm,
For a while, Leslie was just sort of plugging holes wherever they popped up when they popped up, and now they are really planning for a long-term vision of, okay, maybe we can't bring this player in this year, but maybe we'll bring them in a year from now, or maybe we'll just like keep an eye on them. or just having conversations with players in this offseason and maybe not bringing them in, but knowing that those conversations went well, then having a chance to bring them in the future. So I don't think, I think the club is very reasonable about the expectations for this season. It's not a championship. That is what every team wants,
Yeah.
but they are very aware of the fact that it's a very young team. It's a relatively new team. Like, it's for the most part, it's a very young team with like a couple of the oldest players in the league sprinkled in.
Yeah.
Like, in the most loving and respectful way possible.
You've got Anna Maria Srnagorcevic, who, as you mentioned, is what Switzerland's all-time leading scorer.
Yeah,
You've got
she, who is South Korea's all-time leading goal
yes,
scorer.
the league's all-time minutes played leader in Lou
And games
Barnes
played.
and games played. I mean, we could go on with Lou Barnes'
Yeah,
accomplishments
so
here.
many records.
Jess Fishlock,
Who
I
is
don't need to do that with
like
the
38
accomplishments list.
now. Yeah.
Um, Has is not any slouch in that either, having been around for what she's been around for,
I think
right?
she's still only like 28, 29 though.
She's not super old, but she's accomplished is the
Yeah,
point.
she's experienced because I think she started playing relatively young in Europe.
In the goalkeeper department, Cassie Miller, who we mentioned, has been around the league for a good bit.
Right, but still like 28, 29.
Yes. It's like there's a lot of knowledge here. It is funny to think about that. And then yeah, I think
Yeah,
Bella
and
had
then
to
like a
remind me of
16
this.
year old and some 18-year-olds.
Well, but Bella had to remind me of this. You get Sofia Huertas back at some point in the summer. I know
Yeah,
there's a date for it, but you get the point.
yeah,
Like, and then her contract as well.
yeah,
So yeah, it is very funny to think about that. That's a great point. Um,
yeah. So I think they're very, I hope that fan expectations sort of mirror what the club expects. Um, at the same time, they expect to get better every single game. They expect to hold themselves to high standards. Like, not thinking they're going to win a championship this year does not mean that they're not going to work their asses off and that they're not going to try and go for a championship. It just means that they are very self-aware of where they are at. Right, the Sounders ownership came in mid-season, and as Lou put it during preseason, they were already in what they were in. Like, it was great and there was hype around the ownership being back, but the season had already sort of gotten underway. Things had just sort of gone the way they did, and it was hard to get out of that. And still, the Sounders have only had one off season as owners, right? So I think there's still time for that relationship and investment to develop as well. So I do feel good about this team. I feel good that they are improving and that they have some really great, talented veterans to teach some of those younger players. And that also those younger players get some minutes. I mean, obviously, like a player like Jordyn Bugg has 100% deserved. I mean, she's played, I think, like 80, 88 or 89 minutes, if not the full game, every single game. A couple times she has like come off at the very end for stoppage time. And, it's because she's been incredible as an 18-year-old. And she deserves that, but she also is still young and still inexperienced. And that's why it's so great to have a Phoebe and a Lou next to her. And in the future, maybe Sophia. Madison Curry is like 23, 24. She's in her
yep.
second year. Emily Mason in her first year, Maddie Darlene, 21, 22. Like, these are very young players who have been impressive when they first come into the league, and it's still going to take them some time. So
I,
I do feel good about this team. I just am also like
tempering
trying not to get heart.
expectation.
I'm trying not to be heartbroken, and I'm trying to
I
appropriately temper my expectations.
think, and not to kiss ass, but again, the reason that I get so excited to do this show and why and Bella will tell you how adamant I am about doing this show,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is because you talk about this and you see the different perspective and Bella, again, since I started doing this, not necessarily the first year because they had us sitting in different places in 2021 because of COVID restrictions.
Yes.
um but since then it's like I've just learned so much about this league through Bella. I did go to the Reign matches. There are photos of me at Memorial Stadium with my hair, by the way. Um, I know, crazy. Um, I don't know if I saw any of the matches with the very interesting neon and purple kits. I don't know if I was. My mom's Facebook has it. I could look.
Yeah, I think I
Um,
only saw the full neon kits in person.
oh, Jesus.
That
I
was a
know my
time.
mom has a customized kit from the original, like it looks good. Anyway, so but just to think like it's I appreciate it because we talk about this club and I love this club so much because of how we are treated by the players in the organization, and you root for these human beings in addition to our coverage, of course, which has to be unbiased. Um, but I think the way that I'm feeling is to get to my main point, to get away from being a sap, is that I think my hope and belief with this franchise right now is that and it's been talked about since really the sale. And you talk like, I'm going to take what Leslie said, like, I can feel and see the vision going forward. And it's nice to have that because there really wasn't that with OL. What the
100%.
hell we were doing. Like, I will always love, and I don't want to move my camera because it's so nice right now, but like I loved watching Eugenie Le Sommer when she was here.
Oh, that was fun.
Wonderful, such a great person.
The doubleheader, I
Maro,
will never forget those goal celebrations against Portland. Like what a time that was.
it was oh well, moments. It had moments.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't know where we were going. It kind of felt like we were floating around a bit, and I didn't know who was steering the goddamn boat. I didn't know what was going on.
Well, yeah, there was no one to talk to ever.
Yeah, I don't think with us
No
or with
one was
them.
accessible.
So, you know, it just I think it's nice to have that vision. The
Yeah.
little it's just nice to win one kind of saying or meme. Like it's just nice to have a vision for once and know where we're going. So, yeah. That's a good way to kind of get towards the end of this.
Yeah, we've probably made it long enough if anyone's still
Yeah,
listening.
and well, to that point, there's a couple, but there's not a lot of Rain shows out there. Like Fox, I'll do a little like, oh God, when the men's soccer team is losing out of the corner of my eye, let's just close the tank. Um, I'll do a little bit of a wrap up of some news things that have dropped just because this is a Rain show, so I don't want to just have it be fully like, non having the actual stuff, some of the stuff that's not super like results driven. Is there anything that we haven't necessarily touched on that you think is mandatory to be able to tell the story of the past few weeks? I know I touched on Has, and she's been pretty big
Yeah.
for what this club has been this year. That we've talked a lot about a few of the forwards. We've talked a lot about the defense. I guess we haven't talked too much about some of the midfielders, so I guess Has would complete that. But yeah, I don't know. Is there anything that I guess, telling the story of the past 4 weeks, is there anything that you think should be mentioned that we haven't gotten to?
I mean, I think I covered everything that I wrote about in my story. So it
My
was,
story?
I didn't say it like that this
If
time. I
you
really am more just
read
like
it,
I'm more just like those are the talking points that I like really have like put a lot of effort and
thought,
time into
yeah,
like going through those quotes and those stats and everything.
yeah,
Um, I definitely could talk about Has. I almost want to save it for another time.
that's fair.
And I
Yeah,
will just say like she has been uh really great, and I it was great to hear from her after the Houston game. As much as it was a disappointing performance overall, that she's feeling more comfortable and that she also put in a lot of work in the off season to like really improve some of her skills. I think that's really shown. Um, and same with you. That sixth position was one where I had a lot of question marks because she struggled last year. She did. Even with Quinn alongside her, they had a difficult time. And I think she's been very good defensively and surprisingly good offensively. Um, Not because I didn't think that she could play offense or anything, but just because, um, when you think of a pretty, I mean, they sort of push up and sort of switch who's pushing forward a little more, her and Sam Meza. Um, but I tend to think of her as a little bit more on the defensive side of things and putting in some of those tackles and just being positionally aware. Um, so I'll talk more about her another time.
Sure.
But yeah, I think there's a lot of exciting, even if, as much as you want the team to win games, and we do want the team to win games, um, there are a lot of players where it's just exciting to watch their individual development. Like pick a player on the team and just watch them for 10 minutes. And I think that's hilarious faces you're making right now. Um, and, there's a lot of improvement from a lot of players and as a collective. And, I think that's why the team is better this year because they have improved both individually and collectively. You can improve individually, but if you're not also improving your communication and the way you're interacting with your teammates, it doesn't do
Yep.
any good. So I think they've very purposefully, consciously worked on all the things that they know were a problem last year. And they don't expect it to all be fixed immediately. They expect themselves to continue to work on it every single day and get better every single day. Even if it's just 1% every single day, you are getting better every day. And I think that's the mindset of winners, of people who win championships. If it doesn't result in one this year, that's fine. But I think it's very fun to watch. I think the players are very wonderful, entertaining personalities. Um,
That look great on our players and puppies
you do look great in our
series.
players
I
and
would.
puppies.
Hmm.
Yeah, let us know what you want to know from hopefully
Oh,
Linby and Dolo.
you turned my series on, my Siri on. I don't know
I
how
did
that worked.
not say that.
Um, to use a Laura to get back to before I plug the show. To use a Laura word that she uses a lot this year, the mentality really has shown through. I mean, not to,
Yeah,
you know, again, coaches and players in sports have buzzwords, right?
yeah,
But I mean, it shows. Like there are some times where it doesn't show, and I'm just like,
yeah,
this is horse shit.
yeah,
That's not Laura hardly ever does that, I think. Um, and you talk about players in terms of individual growth, and it's kind of like looking within. And I know we'll save it, but has talked about looking within and self-reflecting in the
yeah,
off
yeah,
season because it wasn't the year that she wanted it to be, right? So,
yeah. And I think that's what
um,
Jordyn did too.
yeah,
Like even Jordan Bug had
yeah.
sort of talked about doing some self-reflection, and Emery too in the off season
Oh,
when
Emery,
we
yeah.
talked to them at the event. Um, like everyone, they figured out what they did wrong collectively again as a team, and then they figured out what they needed to work on individually. Like they needed you needed like a 3D 4D approach. Like you can't just approach one aspect of it. And I think you can tell that they have approached it from as many angles as possible, and hopefully it continues to show.
Yeah, no, it'll be, I don't know. It's fun to kind of look at this group and, wonder where we'll be in another, I would hope that we don't have to wait another 4 weeks to do a show again, but, a clump of 4 weeks, um,
We'll see if I can do one before graduation.
just from the seats. Charles, I don't have time to talk about Has right now.
In my
Um,
cap and gown, sitting in the
mhm.
Alaska Airlines arena.
Charles, lighting isn't good here, so we can't do it, all right?
Yeah, and like maybe I shouldn't be talking in the middle of a
Yeah.
ceremony.
Who is that? A few things, just really kind of like housekeeping wise to close us out. I kind of alluded to it, I think, but back on the first of the month, the club and the Sounders, so that partnership there announced a regional media partnership with Fox 13. There's so much ass kissing here. I'm not gonna kiss so much ass. So I don't know. It's cool. They mentioned having this two clubs on the same viewership platform for the first time. Fox 13 has a good amount of these. Matt, let me read the thing.
Well,
So
we love
multi-year
seeing Kellen
partnership.
Rowe do their sideline reporting. That's been fun.
Yes. Uniform broadcast platform for both clubs. Um, mm, 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 mm.
And it just makes games more accessible to people in Seattle, which I think is
Yeah.
important.
So often, and I know you get asked, it's like, well, how do I watch the match? And it's just like when we used to have to like have this like little guide sheet of where the hell these clubs are playing. Um,
Well, it's still pretty confusing. It's just now like it's either Prime or Ion or Paramount Plus or NWSL Plus or Big ABC. You never know.
oh, they actually included some stuff here. Um, yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff in the release that's good. Like especially with the Fox stuff, it mentioned, Good Day Seattle, there'll be regular player features on there and, some community storytelling, not promoting Fox's Washington sports show. I'm sorry. Nope, not doing that. They're just they've committed basically to being doing a bunch of more stuff with the players, which they deserve, right? We're gonna do our own, right? Which is fair.
Yep.
Um, but that as Bella mentioned, Kellen Rowe is serving as the sideline reporter for the broadcast team, which is cool. Kellen's a nice guy. Oh shoot. Our photographer Liz got photos of him doing the sideline like reporting, and there's a great one of him and Laura like laughing at each other. And he's like, "Wait, can you send those to me?" And I was like, "Sure, Kellen."
He
Like,
has he has a great relationship with a lot of the players, which I think is and obviously having played on the Sounders and won everything he did with the Sounders is a very knowledgeable person, but he's also just a wonderful human being who
oh, for
knows,
sure.
who has a closer relationship with some players than others. Like I think him and Lou are both invested in that wine company thing.
His
Um,
wine company.
yes, his wine company. Um, and I think it's anytime like someone local gets involved in local things and is able to stay involved in local sports when it was, such a cool thing for him to come play back at home when he did. Um, I just particularly like seeing him on the sideline. I think is great, and I hope hopefully in the future we get some Reign players who maybe want to go into broadcasting, because always great to have more women in the field. Um,
Laurel, when Laurel's done,
that's a
like
random one to choose. I was thinking more
her
like
personality though, Laurel Ivory.
I almost feel like I would love to see Z do broadcasts.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
she
I
could
I
do a lot of
want
things,
I
as we
also want
know.
Jess's play-by-play analysis. Um, like I want her to be the color commentary because it will be brutal,
Would
and
it be
that's
for the rain
terrific.
though? Because she'd probably say some things that they couldn't air.
Maybe, but that's
She's
what
like,
makes it
no, you can't.
fun.
Yeah, she'd get real. I think she'd get riled up.
But yeah, so it's cool to see him doing that, and I'm glad that they found someone knowledgeable and connected.
Yeah,
Is my point. They didn't just like pick a random person who knows nothing about the sport or the team or the players. They picked
yeah.
someone
That's
who knows the sport and the team and the players.
I think, and that adds to my point about it being that just adding more. And obviously, the NWSL has been around. It's not like it's brand new, but continuing to add bits of professionalism that you see from other of the major leagues, right? Like having a sideline
Yeah,
reporter, having your players actually featured in the local news and not just once in a while when they do well or when they are
yeah,
on the national team, right? So, as much as an independent feels about it, like it will professionalize things a lot more. And as you mentioned, get them in front of eyes who maybe folks who aren't on their phones a bunch or on is tuned in on social media and just kind of watch things on the television. That and Cassie Miller, who we talked about being injured, is the club's nominee for the 2025 Lauren Holiday Impact Award after it was Shea Holmes last year. Um, it's cool. Cassie works with Nick of Time Foundation to champion youth health, safety, and education. So that's nice. True. And oh wow, to provide accessible heart screenings and emergency response training for young people, aligning closely with her passion for health equity and community advocacy. So
and
that's cool.
particularly relevant after this
Yeah,
weekend, I
that's why I
guess.
said, "Oh wow." I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh geez, this is
And
difficult."
just a brief shout out to all of the medical personnel that attended
Yeah.
the Savvy King both efficiently and effectively. Um, really great to see that because I remember covering the Washington Spirit game um, when Dorian Bailey went down with a very severe injury and seemed like she couldn't move. A very different injury, um, but there were players running over to grab the gurney because like EMS wasn't coming out. So it was just it, you know, and that's there were reasons that they didn't necessarily, she was still tended to, and there were reasons that EMS didn't come out immediately. Um, but in this case, it was so crucial that they were there immediately with all of the people and tools that they needed, and I'm really glad that they were able to do that.
Yeah, because in a situation like that, seconds could be life or death. So,
I
um,
agree.
oh, different guest appearance. I was gonna wonder where zero was.
He's snoring.
Me too, dude. Me too. Yeah, so that'll do it. I should probably mention the match that's coming up next and not just be like, all right, peace out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so that one's oh, that's right. It's kind of a quicker turnaround for the Reign because they played on a Sunday and then their next match is coming up on Friday. So we'll get this out. You'll have this perfect in just have a few days to be ready. The next match, May 16th, Friday, at Racing Louisville, 4:30 p.m. Pacific. Yes, Pacific. Sorry. I'm Sometimes Foot Mob is
It's
weird. 4:30 Pacific, yes, on NWSL Plus. So that's free. For those who are not aware, it's free. All you have to do is create a little account. I know I say free and create an account. I know it's a thing,
but
but
they
you don't
don't
have
ask
to
for your
put
credit card
payment
information, and that's
information.
what matters.
That's exactly right. Um, it would have been the first time that old friend, like truthfully old friend Bethany Balser would have been playing against the Reign. I don't think we talked about it on camera. Off camera, Belle and I talked about it. She before the season began, uh, decided to take some time away from soccer to, kind of find the joy in it again. She talked about it. Bethany's always been great about being very vocal about mental health, about, how much this game is a game, and she doesn't want to let it dominate who she is. So, yeah. All right. We'll see when we see again. Lots of stuff is going to happen by the time that we see again because as behind Bella's right shoulder, storm begin on Saturday. So that's so from myself, from Bella, and from another furry friend that's not the other one. Not to refer to Zero as the other one. That
Do
feels
you
bad.
forget his name?
Oliver.
Okay, it's close enough. Technically, it's Ollivander, but we call him Ollie.
Ollivander's so white people. Oh my god.
Okay, it's the wand maker from Harry Potter. I was 16.
White people.
I mean, like, yes, I'm horrendously white, but rude.
You're not ginger, are you?
Do I look ginger? I mean, I'm part
Oh, there's
Irish,
a
but
whole
I'm
thing
not
on
ginger.
TikTok about gingers. So in
Okay,
case you
I don't
haven't,
even. It's not necessary to go into right now. I think we can just wrap it up.
until we see you next time, take care of yourselves, be well. Um, I don't have any smart quiz for you. Do whatever you can to make today a great day.
Hey, Charles.
Hey, Jen.
Hey, where are you going to watch all the away games for Seattle Reign FC this year?
Away games. Well, since Rough and Tumble is the home of Circling Seattle Sports, I was thinking of coming here if that's okay with you.
I think that makes a lot of sense. See y'all here.